Okay, welcome. We're going to get started here. Hope everybody had a good lunch and got their coffee. And we weren't quite sure we'd be here with the government shutdown, but it all kind of worked out at the end of the day. But my name is Tom Suter. I am the CEO of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center. And today we're going to be talking about a topic, and I think it's a fantastic one, growing good in government by building the feedback loops of the future. So this is going to be very exciting. I'd like to welcome all the attendees. Special thanks to Bill Bunce, Jason Trackier, and the entire Broadcom and the USDA team. We kind of co-created this with them. And it's a special one. This is a special Tuesday edition. So I'm going to introduce each of the panelists really quickly, and then Jason's going to kick us off. And while they do their initial presentations, we'll go through everybody, and everybody's got a different priority that they're working on. We're going to open this up to questions. We'd like to have the interaction from you. We're also going to do a couple of poll questions and get everybody involved with us. But real quickly, we'll go through, I'll introduce our panelists. We got Jason Trackier, who's the Fireside Chat and Priority 4, which you'll hear a little bit more about. He's also the MRP Mission Area Senior Manager at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Welcome, Jason. We also have Basil White, Senior Policy Analyst at the Department of Veteran Affairs. Welcome, Basil. We also, and Basil is actually going to be doing Priority 1. Rich Baca is Priority 2, is MRP Assistant Chief Data Officer, ACDO, at the United States Department of Agriculture. Welcome, and it looks like you are right in the office today. Is it 14th and Independence, Rich? Sorry, we got you on mute. Great, we'll have to get you up mute here in a minute. But anyway, it looks like 14th and Independence, but we'll get that when he gets off, finds the right button. And we have also Latanya Anderson, who's Associate Director of Professional Development at the Interior Acquisition Institute at the U.S. Department of the Interior. Good afternoon, excuse me. We also have, and she is Priority 3, which you'll be learning a little bit more about. And then we also have with us an expert in this area that we're going to talk about, Kik Piney. And Kik is the author of the Earned Benefit Program Management series. And then last but not least, we have our industry representative, Bill Bunce. He's a friend of the program, been in more than a few working groups, and he's been an ATARC person for a while. Welcome, Bill. And he's a solution specialist now at Broadcom. Jason, do you mind kind of teeing this up and really where your head's at as far as our topic today?
Hey, no problem, Tom. And I appreciate the warm introduction and welcome to my panelist invitees. Thank you for your attendance today. Bill, would it be easier if I threw the slide up for the audience or just to talk through it?
You could do both, Bill, if you want to throw it up and just talk to it, Jason.
Okay.
Fine by me.
All right. So it's real simple. We're just going to trying to make sure that I get my screen up here. So sorry. All right. So we should have. We got it now. All right. So it should be just a title slide, and we have one more slide. I'm not going to kill everybody with slides today, but did want to do a really good introduction to tee off each one of the priority teams. So what are we doing? The Growing Good in Government group was actually a group of passionate program and project managers for the past 2 years. Many of them are sitting in the panelist discussion with me right now, where we just got together occasionally, put our heads together, and really thought of innovative solutions for our shared capability gaps, especially in program project management. And I'm really happy to kind of see the evolution of our team and bringing in new people and new blood and really kind of teeing this up as our capstone, so to speak, for Growing Good in Government. So really looking forward to that. Our tagline is building the feedback loops of the future. I'm obsessed with complex adaptive systems. So, feedback loops are something that, high functioning systems should have in them. And a lot of our programs and portfolios are missing some of those key components. So we're gonna tee up our 4 priorities for you. So when we first started this, just to kind of level set for everybody, back in 2016, the Program Management Improvement Accountability Act was passed, and essentially it was an act where we were really looking for people to. I'm sorry, did I lose you all? You all still see the presentation, right? Sorry. Yeah, good. So the significance was to essentially enhance the accountability and best practices in program and project management throughout the federal government. That's really what it was. OMB issued M1819, which was their 5-year strategic plan. I've shared this with my colleagues. It's probably one of my favorite OMB documents. If you haven't looked at it, it really gives a really good set of strategies for federal governments and agencies for improving their program and project management. So just to kind of give you those 3 strategies, the first one is coordinated governance. And in M1819, the strategies are actually carried forward in A11, right? Part 6, which is the guidance that OMB gives to federal agencies on budgeting and planning and those types of things. So it's still relevant. That's basically what I'm trying to say. The first strategy is this notion of coordinated governance, right? The alignment of or the collective efforts to ensure that portfolios are translating their strategy to the program level, that programs understand that strategy and are breaking that work up into iterative projects that when that work is created, the output, the benefits are realized up again at the program level, and then the value is translated again back at that portfolio level. So that feedback loop, right? That's really what they're looking for in that coordinated governance. And are we coordinating governance laterally and horizontally, right? Sorry, vertically and horizontally. Working with other components in your organization for kind of like requirements and like benefits. The second piece is this notion of regular portfolio review. So OMB is telling us that we're supposed to be regularly assessing the health of our portfolios and projects and programs. And in order to do that, right, you need to be able to have access to your data and to pull that data up, right? So, well, let me go back. Sorry, coordinated governance. So for coordinated governance, the one system blocker that we have there, right, is this notion of organizational silos, right? So when we were talking about it, every program or portfolio that we spoke to, the organizational silo was that one system blocker that really made it difficult for them to coordinate governance. So today, you're going to be hearing about our solution in this space. It is meant to be a universal solution. All of these, to some extent, should be able to be adopted in various federal governments or agencies. So the IVN is our solution for breaking down organizational silos. The second piece is obviously regular portfolio reviews. And in order to do regular portfolio reviews, we realize that, we all have this shared system blocker and fragmented data architecture. So how do we overcome those fragmented data architectures? Well, our good friend Rich Baca is going to kind of share his insights on a solution that we're bringing to our individual mission area. A lot of really great work is being done across USDA. My counterparts within the other mission areas are also looking at better program project management, how to organize data to be able to assess the health of programs and projects. So really excited to hear from him. The third piece, and again, OMB is telling us that we need to build a capable PM workforce, right? Which means that we have some work to do, right? So the system blocker there that really stops or inhibits our ability to do that is that we don't really coordinate training for the program project management workforce, right? IT does their thing, grants cooperative agreements does their thing, acquisition workforce does their thing, but we all kind of rest under the same 40 or 23 technical competencies for program project managers, right? So we should be coordinating, and Tanya's going to share her insights there. I have a colleague for Forest Service, Kelly Sanzano, that we were hoping would be here to share all of the really great work that we've actually done at USDA level there. Hopefully we'll get some time to dig into that work. And then finally, and again, those are the 3 strategies that we're being guided by the federal government's architecture to implement. So when you take those three things together, what is the thing that we're trying to do, right? And that's performance management, specifically measuring real world impact, and benefits realization management is our answer there. So I'll stop there and kind of tee up the groups that way, Tom. Hopefully that was an okay introduction.
No problem. Thank you for laying it out like this. I think it worked out really well. Anyway, we'll go with Basil White, priority one. If we can go in a little more depth on that, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Basil White. I work with the Department of Veterans Affairs in Central Office, their Office of Enterprise Integration. So I'm going to talk about the Integrated Value Network, but first I'm going to talk a little bit about silos, why they exist and what we can do about them. So why do silos exist? I mean, organizations sometimes work better when people with shared expertise and skills are in a group. Like, you don't want your R&D folks all distributed necessarily. You put them in a group because you want the R&D folks to interact with each other as much as possible. So problems that benefit from collaborating on specialized expertise get siloed. And silos aren't inherently bad. We just think of them as bad things, but really they emerge from a need for capability, efficiency, and effectiveness. So you get things out of putting people in silos sometimes. But one of the consequences of silos, however, is that they make it a lot harder to gather input from outside the silo. So gathering input from outside your silo takes more effort than just staying inside it. So the upshot of that is a lot of products don't benefit from early external input on the benefits they provide to those external stakeholders. So you don't get that early external input on the benefits that you're providing outside it. And therefore, because you don't know all of the benefits you're providing outside your silo, those benefits don't influence your product, and they don't influence how you communicate about it. And that's a loss, because we have found through value integration that there are huge inventories of benefits and opportunities to take credit for the effects of the work of silos to external stakeholders. So I'll get to that in a minute. So the IVN basically finds all of our products, which in this case is governance documents, strategic plans, policies, performance measures, the law, executive orders, that sort of thing. And we go to organizations and we find their products and map them, across into this network of governance. So if you don't do that, if you don't map the benefits of your product, say a policy outside the silo, you won't discover that, say, your product happens to encourage recruitment. And because you don't know that, you don't mention that in your communication. You don't send your product release announcement to the recruitment department. You don't know how to tweak your product to make it more effective to recruit people, because you don't know to do that. And you don't know to ask for recruitment money to fund your development. And when we map value of a program, when we put it into the Integrated Value Network, we find these long inventories of unintended real world impact of that program office, adding value to offices they never even heard of. Like we say in the VA, everyone's in the suicide prevention business, from food service to fleet management, but that's more than an aphorism, because when we map our programs into a network, we can prove exactly how every office is in the suicide prevention business. We can walk them through the network to that. So value integration breaks silos by giving people credit for the positive viral effects of their products. So you can mention those effects in your ad copy. You could transform the unintended value you're providing into intended value that you provide on purpose. And then you can use that value to justify changes in regulations and laws to create more value. So you find other groups that deliver products that add value to yours, and you build agreements to keep that value coming into your office. You find groups that happen to deliver value to the same third-party requirements that you do, third parties like the president, and you collaborate on how to deliver that shared value mindfully. And so the more that silos share how they add value to each other's requirements, the more evidence everyone gets of their net value to everyone. So if your fleet management program happens to align with your recruitment goal, guess what? Fleet management is in the recruitment business. It doesn't matter whether you intended to be in the recruit business, you still get credit for it. So you can wire that value into your ad copy and your design requirements. You can use that value you've identified to maybe get some money out of the recruitment budget. And you can justify the changes in rules and regulations, that you want to deliver more of that value. Also, come budget time, the bigger your inventory of all the places where you deliver value, the longer the list of threats to the enterprise if you don't get the money you made.
Right. That's fantastic. I'll have some follow-up questions, and the questions are coming in. Feel free to answer them, panelists online. I think we're gonna get quite a few. Our next speaker is Rich Baca. And Rich, I think I mislocated you. Even though every government building looks similar, aren't you out in Fort Collins? That's right. I remembered it a little bit later. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you, Tom. Yeah. Are you hearing me okay, by the way?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you fantastic. Love to hear more about Priority 2.
Okay, yeah, Priority 2, I think, every system and every approach you have, you're going to have good data systems and architecture behind it. And of course, I think a lot of what we're starting off here with is really the need to center some core pieces in and around the earned value network mapping that Basil was just talking about. So of course, we're going to have to additionally be linking registries and accurate components that are well groomed and maintained for our programs and projects. And those would be mapped right directly into a lot of our organizational objectives and missions and goals and things of that nature. And secondly, is you're also going to need in that system all of our program leaders and project managers that are driving a lot of that great work. And with that, we'd end up building our benefits and project management frameworks, a system for that. But the real important thing beyond that is to ensure that it also starts getting really closely aligned and linked with our data strategy across the rest of our mission area here. And with that, we're pushing pretty hard. And we don't have classic data warehousing here, which gives us really good answers to what happened already, but we're starting to build more and more infrastructure in that data lake kind of format where we can take a lot of our data and start building it out in a way that would help us start analyzing it in different ways, where we can start figuring out not only what happened, but what's going to happen and why it's going to happen. And that'll start giving us a lot more insights that align to the benefits and kind of the earned value network that Basil was just talking about. So that's one of our big starting points, Tom, is to make sure that we have strong linkages between our system for the overall program and project management frameworks mapped in with our earned value management, running side by side with our organizational data strategy here. And that's one of the key features is platforms that are going to help us bring and raise that data in a reliable and accurate way. So a lot of governance and curation in this space as well of those data sets from the program areas.
Great. Thank you, Rich. Next, we'll go to Latanya. I think you're on mute. Hang on. You're still on mute. There you go. And we still can't hear you, though. Do you have your phone on mute, too?
This is why it's so great to be a project manager. You see, I didn't sweat. Coordinated training. IBM is going to provide big benefit in that area for several reasons. Right now, agencies are struggling with knowing how much PPM training is happening within an agency. Senior leaders, I don't think really appreciate how much money is going out of their agencies where efforts are being replicated. I speak to people on a daily basis who have no idea that another office, several hundreds of feet, virtual feet, are engaging and investing in the same training to meet the same competency for performance. The way that we can handle that is through IBM is we'll be able to have that data, be able to report up to the senior executives that should be leading those efforts. That right there, when we talk about training, is more about culture. We're talking about professional development, training always feels like something where you're kind of on your knees begging a supervisor to pay for a course. What we're talking about is the investment of senior executives in the professionalization of PPM. The issue that we're having right now, or challenge, I should say, is that in PMIA, the Program Management Improvement Accountability Act, it says that chief operating officers oversee the Program Management Improvement Officer role. Yet, many agencies don't have a chief operating officer position. They don't have anybody in that role. And in the Program Management Improvement and Accountability Act, the Program Management Improvement Officer is a role. I say that it needs to be a fully funded FTE position in order for that individual to lead those efforts in professional development in a substantial way. So IBM will again be able to highlight where those silos are, where we're replicating efforts, where we're wasting money, and where we can collaborate as agencies, not just in delivering training, but also in creating training and who we have in our training courses, and be able to get ahead and prepare for ever-ready workforce. We have a lot of efforts coming down in innovation, from AI to cloud computing, digitization, and we need to collaborate and coordinate our resources and make sure that we're getting the best return on our investment.
Yeah, I'll get on my little soapbox here for a minute. I've done enough of these where the agencies that do not train and educate their employees, they have a thing, well, if we train them too much, they're going to want to leave. Actually, if you don't train them, they're going to want to leave. A lot of folks are driven by that, and they want to keep learning, and they're the good people, and they want to stay in organizations that allow them to do that. Next, why don't we go with you, Kik, on priority 4, and anything else you want to add?
Okay, I'll try to bring a few things together. Build on Basil's mention about shared value, and Rich on aligning data, and Latanya on overlaps and so on, because I think the earned benefit concept support and enhance the G3OI objectives of streamlining operations, so reducing overlaps and wasted costs, and they enable effective, therefore, collaboration between the agencies to deliver the strategic benefits. Along with the IVN, the earned benefit method, and this is a practical method that works, and it provides a straightforward and visual and intuitively comprehensible roadmap. So we're talking about a map. People understand maps. They take you from one place and help you get to another one as effectively as you can. And it'll map the sort of interdependent routes. We're talking about feedback loops, and the routes are interdependent. People depend on what comes out of the other people. So this encourages, one, streamlining of operations, because it highlights the gaps, the overlaps, and the redundancies. And the techniques allow each participant to be really involved and track progress. It sort of answers the interesting questions of, are we on track to success? But not only that, it addresses the 2 subsidiary questions that really matter. Am I fulfilling my responsibilities, as well as how effectively is my work contributing to broader interagency success? Because this doesn't break down as such silos, because as we said, silos have a real justification. They actually allow the silos to interact and interwork with each other, so that you get the separate agencies working with each other while allowing each organization to retain its specific focus, as we said, which is so important, and specializations. So the goal is know how to work best together and how to move forward.
Great, thank you for that, Kik. And last but not certainly not least, we have Bill Bunce, and I'd love to hear the industry perspective. How can we help government?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Tom. You know, according to GAO, And part of the impetus around the PMEA Act that Jason introduced at the beginning is only 36% of government initiatives meet their strategic goals and their business objectives. And government entities, can waste an estimated $100 million for every $1 billion spent on projects and programs. Growing Good and Government initiative, we identify the key reasons and blockers to combat these challenges. But more importantly, as we've introduced here today, specific solutions in the 4 priorities that we talked about. So industry, and specifically the company that I work for, Broadcom, has tools that help implement many of the concepts and frameworks like value benefit management and integrated value network that this ATARC working group will be working on and developing. So in the future meetings and webinars, what we hope to do is to dive deeper into these 4 priorities that we've introduced today. So if you're in industry and you're interested in getting involved in this working group, feel free to reach out to me and I can give you more information about ATARC and contributing to the working group. And finally, Tom, what I'd like to do is really just thank you and ATARC for recognizing the need for this working group and providing the infrastructure for government, industry, and academia to collaborate on this important topic. Thanks, Tom.
Oh, no problem. I think that's our mission, to try to help government do these kinds of things and to break down these silos, and happy to be a part of it. We're going to pack a lot in today. We need to get in our polls, and the reason we do our polls is we offer CPE credits. Plus, I think these polls will be interesting. So we'll just dive into the polls and see what we come up with. So poll number 1, which shared system blocker do you believe has the most detrimental impact on the federal project and program outcomes? So I guess you can't choose more than one, but you get to choose one, and as panelists, you all get to choose as well. We'll just give it a second. Let's see what can we pull that up? Wow, it's kind of a little bit of everything, right? I think I would have picked all the above. I think that you could tell by the weight it is. And I don't think we have too many surprises there, but it's all of the above, right, Jason?
Yeah, that looks, that's probably right. I mean, they're all equally contributory, right?
Yeah. Let's try the next poll question. In your opinion, how well equipped is the current federal PM workforce to adapt to emerging challenges and evolving program requirements? Okay. Of course, this is anonymous. Okay, well, definitely everybody knows it's anonymous. So to get to fully equipped and ready, we've got a lot of work to do. We're about 3% there, right? So I guess this working group hasn't, when we get those numbers up, at least we have a metric, Bill, to try to push that along a little bit. And okay, well, might as well go with the one more, the last one. How transformative do you expect the implement of G3I's solutions to be for enhancing federal government program and project outcomes? All right. This is a little aspirational, but we'll put that up anyway. Okay. Seems we got an optimistic crowd here.
Love it.
So I think we got honest folks. Some people don't know. That's why they're here to learn and do this. So we've got a couple of questions that are being answered by the panelists. I want to ask each of the panelists, each of the panelists a question or two about their priority list. Let's go with you, Basil. How will you actually implement this to solve a shared problem? I mean, how are you actually going to do this? How do we actually do it? What do you see that we have to accomplish to do this? So it's a complex question.
So by a shared program, do you mean a program?
Sure. I mean a shared problem. If I said program, I misspoke.
Sure.
How are we actually going to implement this? How do you see this rolling out?
Okay. Well, first, we're going to do the first step is we take an inventory of all of our governance documents that we want to use to influence the change that we want to make. Okay, strategic plans, priorities, the president's priorities, executive orders, public law, U.S. code, and we build the inventories of those things. And then for the next thing we want to create or improve, let's see, a strategic plan or an initiative, or in case of the USDA, the African swine fever. We align everything to it. And then based on that, we get to accomplish 3 major goals. We walk down the path. The first one is, now that we know the inventory of how the African swine fever response plan delivers on things that the Secretary of the USDA and the President wants, and what other commands of the USDA want, we can communicate those facts. We can say, this is our plan. This is all the stuff that's going to deliver on it, and this is everything that's going to deliver on it. So we know the value streams both in and out of this program that we're trying to create and implement. That's a communication piece. That's one. The second one is, now that we know those value streams, we can increase the value within them. So now that I know that the African swine fever, I hope I'm saying that right, the African swine fever plan delivers on a particular HHS public health goal, we can mindfully change our program to increase the value we deliver to that HHS goal. And then the third one is, now we understand how this plan aligns within the entire network of USDA and federal governance. We can identify how those laws, how those elements help or hinder the overall delivery to the citizen, which gives us this basis of evidence for changing policies, plans, drafts of executive orders, and the law. And we have actually seen all of those things implemented, and we have manifested them in other iterations of the IFN. But thank you for the question.
Great, thank you. Next, we'll go with Rich. And Rich, I've had a lot of experience in the past on USDA, and I remember, I think it was NAS had like 10 definitions for grain. It's very difficult. You have lots of different sub-agencies, and you have to deal with other agencies even. How do you envision the evolution of data schema, taxonomy, and ontology for portfolios, programs, projects, and products over the next few years? Very complicated problem. I know that you all have been working on for quite some time.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge, and we are a very broad and big organization with a lot of core domain areas. I think as we look into solving some of the real specific challenges, I think we're really going to have to rely pretty heavily on governance and standardization of data, and continue to reach out more broadly outside of just our specific mission areas and even beyond USDA to develop a lot of those standards. I think we definitely see plenty of interaction in a lot of those spaces, but some of the other things we can do that are a lot simpler is probably bigger picture domain mapping, so we understand a lot of the core functions a little bit better, that we should potentially be finding those opportunities for data standardization, maybe even things like master data management with some of the USDA assets. And then of course that gives us then the opportunity to also partner if we're dealing with something like food security, food safety, as Basil's talking about a little earlier. There might be opportunities for us to also be talking with some of the partners in that area, whether it's Health and Human Services, FDA, or others, and making it easier and simpler during peacetime for us to potentially be able to share that data when we're dealing with critical issues in the country. And again, I think we're centering some of our discussion around African swine fever today, as Basil was talking about, which is a disease that legitimately can threaten the United States swine economy in a pretty big way. So us being able to work across all of those areas is really important. And we do have really good working examples of data standardization to this degree within the APHIS components already. But they certainly could be extended and expanded. So I think there's a macro and a micro level to how we work at data standardization and data sharing and interoperability with data. That way we can be prepared to share and move it pretty quickly when we need to.
Thank you for that. Next, Latanya, considering the diverse backgrounds of program and project managers, how does the P/PM knowledge networks approach cater to different learning needs and styles? And I know before even answered, it's like people come from different backgrounds, they do different jobs, and then they change. You know, we're upskilling, we're reskilling. How do you codify that to a degree, right? And engage with different styles?
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on it in my intro. There has to be a culture change. The way that we look at training and professional development in the federal government, it really isn't a priority. So if it's not a priority, we're already kind of behind the 8 ball in being able to quickly deliver training that can hit a lot of different skill gaps. We just came out with, probably within the last 2 to 3 years now, because of PMIA, competency assessment tools. Isn't that crazy? Think of how long people have been doing federal government work, and no one said that we need some way to assess what people are doing, the as is to the to be in regards to competencies. So when we're talking about that, someone had asked me about the preferred training method. All of that is aligned to it. If you don't know what skill gap that you need to fill for me, you're not even ready to hear what is the preferred training method for me to attain that competency. So I think that, again, IBN will allow us to identify and acknowledge where these gaps are. It'll also allow us to prioritize. As you just said, there's a lot of things to learning and development. Are we upskilling? Are we reskilling? Are we ready to redeploy? We just talked about African swine flu. In Latanya's world, I would love that PPMs would already be skilled and ready to deploy, just like we do the military, that we wouldn't have to upskill them quickly every time we have a new priority. Program and project management should have some shared strong competencies, and then all we have to do is tweak and add into certain specialties in order to perform and deliver those programs and projects.
Great, thank you. Next.
Hey, Tom, do you mind if
Yeah,
I
go ahead, Jason.
briefly, so just to answer that from a USDA context, because Latanya is a leader in this space in the federal government. But my colleagues, the Mass PMs across USDA, and we have a huge contingent of volunteers this year for the Growing Good in Government initiative. Many are in the audience today. We have been working for about 2 years now in generating kind of these solutions to these capability gaps that Latanya is addressing. So, for example, USDA partnered with the Department of Commerce to bring their assessment tool to USDA, and we're rolling that out now. We created the first ever USDA program project management community of practice. That's the Mass PMs doing this in the space, and really recognizing that if we come together and we work together and we harness our pre-existing technology, it's amazing the stuff that we can actually accomplish, the classes that we can put on. And we have just released our first quarter of content to our PPM population with 6 individual sessions, right? So we're really excited about this notion of identifying our shared capability gaps, but coming together and really kind of creating kind of these capabilities that didn't exist before just because we came together in the first place. So just wanted to share that and kind of tout USDA's accomplishment in this space.
Fantastic. We were talking a little bit about the Center Prep call, but Kik and Jason, if you want to chip in, you can. How can we measure the real world impact? How do we actually do that? And how does the benefits realization management ensure that intangible benefits such as resilience and improved collaboration are captured along intangible ones? I'll let you go ahead, Kik, and kick that off, and then we'll go back to you, Jason.
It's always interesting for people to say it's intangible, but they want it to happen. So there must be some way of knowing whether it has or not. And frequently things appear to be intangible because you haven't talked to the people who really care and are impacted by it. What impact is it going to have on you or your function or your work that we aren't as resilient as we should be? How will you know we aren't as resilient as we should be before something goes wrong? And asking those questions allows you to come up with some maybe proxy measures, like the things we are offering to change that will make you more, in this case, resilient. And what is resilient? It's different in each person's mind to some extent. You know, is it putting up with pain, or is it changing things so the pain is acceptable, or is it avoiding pain? All of those are different ways of people saying I've improved my resilience, but they need different solutions and they may not suit each of the stakeholders. So the starting position for any of this is really understanding what your customers or what your population really cares about before you go sort of being too arrogant and saying, I don't know what your problem is, but I've got the solution. Because the moment you know what the problem is, you can work back to say what needs to be changed to do it. So it isn't intangible, but it's hard to define. That's slightly different.
Okay, gotcha. Jason, you want to add anything?
So I very rarely have anything to add to Kip. He seems wildly insightful, so I appreciate that. The one context that I want to throw in here is that for my colleagues who are listening, or maybe after the fact, within the federal government, right, we're always, everybody's doing the best that they can. Let's just level set there, right? Nobody's, you know, and I've always been of the belief that we really don't have a program or a project management problem. We have a portfolio management problem, right? Our ability to kind of understand the aggregate of all of our activities. And at the root of that is, what are we doing, right? When Congress gives an agency money, it's to deliver a benefit to the public, not just public entitlements, but as you are executing your program, you're delivering some tangible or intangible benefit to the public. If we started focusing on that instead of the amount of money that we're spending or the amount of widgets that we're processing through our organization, we start to change the calculus, right? If we, wow, okay, so benefits, you know, the tangible or intangible benefits that we're delivering. And then if we organize our performance management systems around that notion, well, then all of a sudden we can measure real world impact, because those benefits are going to a person. And to Kick's point, we then know and can communicate with that person as to, did you receive the benefit? Is it as valuable as I think it is, right? I mean, it's all part of the feedback loop to really understand, are we delivering the benefits? And are we delivering the benefits at the level that we think that we're delivering in relation to the cost to deliver those benefits, right? And then that becomes part of the program and portfolio management calculus.
Yep, great. We got a question, and I see some folks are answering it online, some of our folks on this panel. But I'm going to actually bring this over to you, Bill, on about silos. In industry, you encounter silos, and you have to sell your software to like 5 different groups sometimes. How is a challenge? What have you seen that you think can, and it's because of appropriations, probably, you know, I get the money from, you know, I control my own money, and there's lack of collaboration. What would you recommend to agencies that have this problem, which is pretty much all of them?
Well, you know, this concept of the integrated value network, where we're trying to bring together, you know, not only, you know, these are policies and procedures across, you know, the entire federal government, is a huge help to us industries. So as we begin to bring our, you know, technology to the federal government, one of the big challenges, everybody does things differently, right? So there's a significant amount of configuration in order to make it work. Certainly government works different than industry. A lot of the technology is designed first for industry and then adapted for government. And so, you know, some of the things that we've been talking about today is very helpful to industry to really just define, what they're trying to accomplish across this area: program in performance management. One of the things that we have talked about as a group within the working group is trying to build out, a capability, whether you call it a lab or something like that, within ATARC, where we can bring some of these technologies together and government can come see, how other parts, USDA or Department of Interior, are doing some of these things and demonstrate them.
That's fantastic. See if we can get to some other questions. I think we got some that are going to be direct. Here's one here. This seems like a big undertaking, which I believe it to be, and that's why we're going to have to do a working group. We are not going to solve it with one webinar, obviously. Are you able to conceive of an active effort with your collaborators on this panel? How do you see this being rolled out across government?
Well, first of all, so that question came from one of our other collaborators, Beth Martin, right? She's fantastic in this space. But it's a good question, right? So I was typing an answer and I'll just go ahead and share it here. So we've been working offline for about 4 years, as I said before, right? Latanya, Basil, Beth, Rich. I mean, we've been in this space and engrossed in our own domains, right? So Latanya, she has tons of working groups that she leads in her space. Basil does the same thing, and Rich is a leader in data and analytics for MRP. So working with them in that shared knowledge and expertise, coming together and realizing the interconnectedness to our individual domains, we're literally living what we're professing in the IVN as a solution, right? That connection, creating kind of those connections, and then the wider network that brings additional people in to solve those problems collaboratively, so we don't have to potentially reach out to contractors and these types of things.
So you've been doing this now for 3 or 4 years, been making progress. What has been the most transformative moment or milestone in your journey for anybody here? What are some of the highlights? And now we're kind of breaking this out even further government wide. I mean, I'll start off with you once again, Jason, for you.
I have to say a little shout out to my friend Paul Quimby. That was probably the most revolutionary point, because Paul is literally the connective tissue between most of these people you see in the group, and he's not with us today. But getting to know those people and then sharing your ideas, because when I first started this, I was by myself and I was shooting off all kinds of models, sustained benefit delivery model, all kinds of ideas that I had. And Paul saw the ideas and said, hey, Basil and Beth over here are doing amazing work. How about you go talk to them? And here's Latanya to help you with your training and development piece. So I'd have to say that one, Paul Quimby, but just in general, every single person that we brought into the initiative has been another level that we've been able to take this thing.
I mean, I'm going to ask everybody this question. Basil, what have you gotten out of it? What is some of the highlights that you've had so far?
We can prove that parking spaces reduce veteran suicide. We've helped landing teams or incoming presidential administrations, instead of just understanding all of the issues that they're going to have to confront when they take over a cabinet agency. We align all those issues with the priorities of their campaign platform, which we know every item in the campaign platform has a subject matter expert behind it. And so instead of just giving them, here's a couple of big binders of our problems, we say, here's all our problems sorted by your priorities as you defined in your campaign platform. And so we were, behind that, the transition team said, okay, Bob, you're the expert in this. Carol, you're the expert in that. Ted, you're the expert in that. And we gave them a far deeper contextual understanding of how to match what we need with what they wanted.
So let me just pull the string on that. So a lot of folks would say, well, we need a better customer experience. You're saying there's so many different things that can be measured that provide a cumulative benefit, right? How do you measure some of these things? Like, how do you measure the, more parking spaces, just to get granular? How
Sure.
did you know that? How did you come up with that? I think it's brilliant, but how did you come up with it?
We have, well, someone asked about JPRAMA. I try to answer it in the chat. So JPRAMA requires us to have lots of the governance documents and requires explicit connections among them. Okay, one of those is the annual performance plan and report, which is specific performance measures that have to be tagged to your strategic plan objectives, right? And so we have suicide prevention metrics. Okay, that we also have data that that one of the leading correlations in reducing suicide is basic access to care. Construction and facilities management knows that that access to care is a primary driver of their physical planning and architecture. And therefore, we can walk a path of data to, the number of patients who go to a particular facility with their, with the parking volume, and if they have enough parking spaces or not, and we can walk that back to a correlation. And even if we don't have that data in other situations where we don't have that explicitly, we can say, okay, well, you can kind of understand that whether you can park at the hospital or not affects whether you're going to have access to care. And we know for a fact that access to care relates to veteran suicide. That means construction and facilities management is in the suicide prevention business. And they can align their people, money, and things, and budget and staffing proposals against that. It's this flaming sword of the Evidence Act that allows us to create all these linkages and and communicate how all these programs help each other.
It's fantastic. Latanya.
Yeah, this is a really good question. I mean, when you said it, just gave me a flashback about how deep this is. So Jason talked about Paul Quimby, who is our acting program management improvement officer at the Department of the Interior. And someone asked a question in the chat about the collaboration of government and industry. When Paul came on board, he was a contractor, and he happened to be at the right place at the right time with the right skills and all of that to slide right into this government job, leading us as an acting program management improvement officer. And Paul and I had a lot of discussions about the internal silos. And in order for us to implement PMIA, how not only would he and I have to socialize and convert and transform the culture, we would also have to build a network. Well, he was coming into the government. What network could he build? So I then brought in the networks that I knew. He connected with Jason. Jason connected back with me. And I'm watching this whole thing, us actually doing what IBN is standing for. We created our own integrated network in spite of the challenges, silos, and barriers. We came together for Americans to say to them and to show them, in spite of that, we are committed, dedicated, inspired to grow good government.
Yeah, fantastic. Love the passion. Rich?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think right at the end of Basil's talk, he kind of nailed it for what's probably the most relevant to all of this to me. And that's every day as a data officer, really thinking about how are we going to deal with all the compliance and objectives and enforce in and around the Evidence-Based Act, and how it aligns to federal data strategy, USDA data strategy. And every day, or every time we're engaged with parts of this work and conversations with Jason, we're seeing the parallel, the alignment of all of these objectives kind of coming together, working together. And of course, all this evidence is the key. We have to provide evidence. The whole EVN provides a type of evidence. The data by itself provides more and more evidence to whether or not we're performing well in government and providing the services that our programs are intended to do. So I think that's been the the biggest part for me that I've appreciated being part of all this. And I think it'll only continue to grow. We have so many common goals too, like training, workforce development, all of these other types of things that are just key and well aligned.
Yeah,
So I think that's it for me, Tom.
great, no problem. Kit, you literally wrote the book on earned benefit program management. What? Let's just step back. Should I ask you this right away? How did you write this book? What made you do this? Give us some background on it.
Well, one of the main points was I got very disappointed with people saying, I'll just measure how much money I get for how much money I've put in. It's not down to money. The well-being of your citizens is not down to how much you spend on them. And that's really where it came from. It was, benefit is something that is, well, as you said, sometimes very hard to measure, but never really simply money got in versus money spent. You can always measure that, but most of the tools, and I did some work with the other parts of US government, and basically they are still, unfortunately, on tracking how much really the contractors should be paid for the work that's been completed. It's not down to how much you should pay somebody for what they've done. You should be talking about the people for whom it is done and how much good it's done them. And that's where the ideas came from. So I started working back. It wasn't, the original tools are earned value, but it was only value to the contractors and not to the people actually signing the contract, wanting the work done. It was down to the earned value is what the accountants say the value is. And between you and me, accountants know everything about money and nothing about value.
I think you're right about that one.
Or if there are any accountants,
Yeah.
they can charge me.
Yeah. Bill, any final thoughts? This is the fastest hour I think I've ever done a webinar. You want some final thoughts? I will let, and then we'll let Jason wrap things up.
Yeah, I mean, what we've been talking about is this fundamental shift of, judging the success of a program or a portfolio, not by the features and functions that the contractor was able to develop, but by, as we've said, the value that's able to deliver to whoever the end customer it might be. Now, in order to do that, you need to start at the beginning, at the planning phase. So when you're planning your budget for the year, when you're funding a program, you need to identify, what does success look like? What is the value that this is going to deliver to the customer, whether that's a soldier or an end user, a farmer someplace at USDA. So obviously, there's tools and technology that allow you to define what those things are. And then on a regular basis, for example, the Defense Acquisition University provides templates, for value assessments. And they recommend that you do a value assessment, a minimum of once a year for every program. And so, for example, technology that Broadcom offers called Clarity gives you the ability to automate that whole process and so on. So it kind of all comes together.
Thank you, Bill. And Jason, final comments?
Yeah, so I just leave everybody with this notion, right? So we have energized an amazing group of volunteers. We have, I think we're over 65 volunteers, literally people who are going to give 4 to 8 hours a week for the entire fiscal year for each one of these priorities. So we've broken them up. We have really strong teams that we're going to go into next fiscal year. We have great priority leadership, and our executive sponsors are on board. My bosses. Can you imagine? Let's just take a second. Think about being a leader, and somebody comes to you with this notion, right? So I have this idea. I want to work, run working groups with volunteers, and I want to share it across with ATARC and everyone else, right? Not a lot of federal leaders would be okay with that, right? It's a bit of a risk tolerance issue, and I have to applaud my leadership for really supporting and promoting this idea. But going forward, we encourage our federal collaborators, our academia and industry, read in on what we're doing. We're going to create some I think a LinkedIn group for growing good in government, we can coalesce around that particular group, but would really encourage more participation, especially from industry and academia on each one of our working groups. Thank you.
Great. Well, I think we're going to solicit a bunch of folks. Last poll question. I promise. Have you answered? This is your CPE question. We have to do this. So please answer it. I'd like to thank Bill, Latanya, Rich, Basil, Kick, and Jason. This has been fantastic. I've enjoyed the discussion. A lot of great questions. We got to most of them, but we'll continue the discussion in our working groups, and then we have our regularly scheduled Thursday webinar, Identity Government's a Critical Enabler of Zero Trust. We've got a great panel. We look forward to seeing you all on Thursday. Thank you all. This has been fantastic.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Thanks a lot, Bill. Really appreciate all of the work getting this put off. Really appreciate it.